lazy and inept and corrupt, yeah, he then picked Jason, yeah, so and that was the only reason that he got charged, wrongfully convicted and charged.
Right, so that's what Terry's going to say. Yeah, you do that bit.
He walks on his wife and everybody else got
The police went back to him in 2005 twice to keep asking him for clarity, but not only that, they kept asking him to guess.
Hold up there.
We don't want you to guess, Mr. Arthur.
Was they asking him for clarity, or was they giving him information?
Well, however you want to look at it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to actually use the word bent old bill in this.
Yeah.
All right?
Yes, that's
I'll
the
be
right
the one
word.
who throws
It
that
is
up.
the right word.
I'm going to throw up bent old bill. It stinks of bent old bill. You've only got to look at Operation Countryman, where the robbery squad and all the others was nicked. They had to bring outside old Wilkie investigating that. Right? The Birmingham 6, Guildford 4. Yeah.
Maguire 7.
Yeah, you let
Johnny Kamara.
yeah, Johnny Kamara. We're going to. Well, that is very powerful. That's very powerful. So what
He
we
was
do is,
convicted on a bogus ID.
what we're going to do, we're going to give a little straw and we're going to put it in each other's hands so that no one interrupts.
No one can talk over each other. I think we just need to have
one person at a time.
speaking,
Yeah, that's what I'm
So
saying.
that we now move on to the next picture.
Go on.
Find it. Where's it gone?
Is that within the car?
So the other key point why Jason was convicted is because Jason said he was the passenger in a silver car, right? And the witness said the passenger of the silver car got out with a knife and stabbed him once in the chest, right? He was asked to describe the silver car, and this is the car that he described. Find it. Here somewhere. So that is a small Ford Focus. This is the car that he described.
In 2005.
As Jason stepping out.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is the car he claimed the stabber got out of. The reality is, Jason was sitting in this car,
And he didn't get out of the car.
and he didn't get out of the car, and it's 6 foot in difference.
Let Linda say that bit.
Yeah.
Linda can remember
I'll
that.
do the poem.
I'll do the poem, alright.
Yeah, I'll do the poem.
Alright, let me see what's coming next and see what I'm going to do.
So that's another
Yeah, I
key
remember that
point.
Do you want to do that?
I'll see what else comes up.
The other
I'm ready for
thing
the big
that's
stuff.
really unbelievable about this case
Right.
is the guy that was in the car with Robert Darby is a guy that has seen everything. Not only has he seen everything, the two witnesses describe him at 5'7" in the street. They even go further and say, listen, he was the same height as me, but he was skinnier. That's the detail they gave the police. But this man did more than that, yeah? Because
He
he
hid the blade.
hid the knife.
Yeah, he hid the blade.
He hid the knife right here.
It's standing on,
You can
yes.
see
Do you want
him.
to do that?
Is that Paul Hunt?
But not only did he hide the knife, he contaminated the crime scene. He moved this car away from the crime scene. When the police showed up, they didn't know where the crime scene was.
They
It was
thought the
over
crime
there.
scene was there.
But they thought it was here. So they did all their investigations around here.
Stupid idiots.
Yeah.
So they were misled, really.
So no forensics,
This is
no
the same
DNA.
man that actually years later said that the person who got
Convicted wasn't him.
acquitted of this was the person that threatened him not to talk about the.
Well,
Linda, would you?
yeah, so what happened
Should
was
we- should
this
we do that
man
bit?
kept trying
I should
to
do
not
that.
help the police. He did everything not to help the police. But the reality is this man knew everything that happened. He was with him up to the 12 hours before. He knew that Robert Darby was trying to get power and all the rest of it. He knew he'd been in a bar the night before and so on and so on. But what he did, unbeknown to us, we didn't know that this man who hid the knife knew Martin Power. That came out years later. This man turned up at court and he said, I was asleep in the car.
He turned up in a wheelchair because he didn't want to come.
Yeah, remember? So he said to the court
Was
he
that
was
right?
asleep in the car. And what it did, by him saying he was asleep in the car, it bolstered Martin Power's defence because he said he was knocked out by Robert Darby. So you've got one person knocked out, one person injured, one person asleep. It only left Jason for the jury to convict. And that's how they got away with murder, basically.
Another thing on that is no witness said they saw two people lying in the street. They had to, if Power was knocked on the head, knocked unconscious, he would have to have been lying on the street, and the injured man had to be lying. No witness said there were two men lying in the street.
Right. Yeah, no, it's very important.
Is anyone talking about the pathologist here?
So basically what happened there,
Policy, are you?
well, Satish, I'm not sure, but the pathologist is this basically. 45 days before the trial happened, a pathologist by the name of Dr. Kenneth Shorrock, there was a Home Office document that said he'd been removed from the register, and the reason for that was his involvement in 3 other cases. But the Court of Appeal say that this conviction is safe because the pathology agrees with Abdul Ahmed. So we already know that Abdul Ahmed is now drunk. He viewed the scene as being drunk. He's told a reporter that. But where the pathologist is bent, if you like, is because he should never have been portrayed to the jury as an expert when he wasn't. Now, it was a big mistake by Jason's defence, so it's a very difficult one to get round. But it doesn't come away from the fact that they should never have had another pathologist rely on his evidence.
Yeah.
But the bigger picture is that judge should have told the jury that he had been struck. Because it's all about how they view it. So in the fairness of justice, if our defence had walked in at the beginning and said, listen, we've got this pathologist struck off, there wouldn't have been a trial. You can't allow it. So that's
I think
reality.
also the fact that even the judge said that the identification was problematic.
Well, he chucked it out.
Yeah, and chucked it out, which was the only evidence that got
him in.
Jason into court in the first place. And then for me, that should have been a grounds for a mistrial.
Absolutely.
That's right. You're 100%
But the judge didn't rule it a mistrial. He how did he do that?
Yeah.
Because it was grounds for a mistrial,
definitely, 100%.
but he hadn't. He let the trial carry on.
I think for anyone who's an outsider can see why there's so much corruption.
And in
this
fact,
case.
it wasn't disregarded. The judge didn't tell them to not use it against Jason until towards the end of the trial, was it?
No, it was at the end.
It was
It was just before the summing up.
Yeah.
But what is unbelievable from a public point of view that's gone on here is that guy that came to court and said he was asleep. The prosecution's KC was a guy called Dennison. So Dennison's put him in front of the jury, trusting him to tell the truth. He already knows he's done all this at the crime scene. He already knows he's done all this, but he took it and he put him in front of the jury. When we got to the Court of Appeal, the same barrister that put him in front of the jury has turned around and said, but he has no credibility anyway.
Yeah, wasn't believed.
And then the Court of Appeal said, well, even if he did tell the truth, sort of thing. But the point is, 2 witnesses came to that Court of Appeal, the victim's brother and that guy's ex-partner came there and said that Paul Hunt told them both that Jason Moore never got out of the car and the other guy stabbed him. And because of that guy, they just got a red pen and went,
So they can believe him when they want to,
Yeah,
and just
exactly.
disbelieve him when they don't want to.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think we need to get all that across. And
I think, unless Sandra's got anything to add,
No, that's
I
it.
think that's the key bits we should stick to. Always think in your head,
I think it's
what
very
would the
powerful
public
when you
think?
picked up
Definitely.
the height.
Probably some
I
of the
think
pictures,
definitely
then
pick
you
up the fact that this
that.
pathologist lied
And
under
we
oath.
know-
Yeah.
He didn't lie under
2000,
oath, Anthony.
He changed the report.
I think what he did, he made his hypothesis that it was Leytonstone before
Well,
he
yeah.
actually
Oh,
looked
in
at the test
another
results.
case,
Yes.
yes.
No, this
yes.
is facts. I've got it all here, mate. The
Yeah.
geezer changed the report on the autopsy.
Yeah, that was
To
in
suit
the
his own
Mendez
thing, so
case.
he
Do you remember
is
that
That's in
right.
the
Stockport
Mendez
case?
case, which
No,
had
that's another
only,
one.
was
That's
only
another- that's
a
another
few months
case.
before
So this
Jason.
guy's got
Again, a lot of pressure was brought to bear on
One
him.
case is on
That's
an
why-
autopsy
Same as
that
what
was
is in this
8
case.
2000.
Yeah.
He changed the autopsy report. Completely
right.
changed it.
Cursed it.
Then you've got the other case, which is Charles Mendes, who got murdered by the police. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's 2.
That's the
And
big
then you've got
one.
Jason's case as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
3 things need to be talked about. That's
Basically, the
pathologist.
description of the first car
Yeah.
was this
I
one,
mean,
but in reality
if,
it was a
there's
BMW.
the
car.
James, if we need to, we can always.
Exonerated, and it's how it affects your life.
It's about the case that's in the
You
present
came
moment.
out of prison.
Well, what he did, he
Stop when you walk out.
No,
I bet I've been out 20 years and I still suffer. So,
I remember when I met you, for lunch. And I remember you telling me about, like today, the case when they deducted the money for your board and lodging and how upset you were. And I was astounded because I never even knew that law existed until you told me that day. And Johnny had to fight for his compensation for I don't know how long. And then years later, he said, when I got my money, they then turned around and said, thank you very much, we're taking it for your board and lodging. He said, board and lodging.
But the thing is, they don't do that. People who are guilty and serve the time, that's the ones that should pay for their board and lodging, right? Because you've been kept there for all this time and it didn't cost you a penny, and you were guilty.
But the man that's innocent, they've charged.
I'm new to the case. Make room for one more, please, guys.
We used that argument.
We know it was my power. However, we can't get him because he's on the run. However, now that he's come back, he's not talking, he's not saying anything. But we know it's him. So what we're going to do, we're going to charge Jason, and hopefully he will then come forward and then choose the guilt.
Right. First is there enough evidence against the suspect.
That came out 7 years later. So what it was, there was an identity parade in 2005. And nothing came of it. It was all wrong, and they picked up the wrong people.
We keep these two rascals are doing it together.
Okay,
Okay, is everyone ready, yeah?
Yes.
Anyone need a drink?
No, we love it. No, let's get to work because she's got to get to work.
Let's blow it out of here.
No, you can. I can tell you.
So everyone good to go?
Just one second, guys.
Oh, Sandra.
Yeah.
That's Jason's.
Right. Are we ready, everyone, now?
Not a lot of wine.
I can just
Right.
And
Quiet, please.
sorry, Johnny. So is everyone good to go then?
Yeah, good to go.
Okay, so cameras running.
Before we do start quickly, if you feel that you can't say something, just say I can't talk about it.
I was just explaining about the CCRC. I was one of the first cases there. I'm at the CCRC representing aftercare for miscarriage of justice. I can't discuss cases.
No, of course
No,
not. No, of course not.
Nor can Linda, so that's
No,
cool.
I can't.
All right, because we've got to protect people who are on licences here. Very.
It's not that. It's that I'm there to represent the people like Jason and Phil. I can't discuss. I can't sit there and go through all that.
No.
We can edit anyway. Anything that shouldn't go in there, we'll take it
I
out.
can explain what the situation is when somebody goes to the CCRC, how they do investigations.
We're going to do what really.
Let's get going. Let's get going now.
We're going to do like names first, introduce yourself to the table, who you are, and that sort of thing, so everyone gets
Where are we starting?
Right, no, we're starting with you, with the poet.
No, we can identify ourselves, who we are.
Names first.
Before we
Who we are.
start, I think it would be good if all of us introduce ourselves to the camera, then the public will get to see who we are, and then they can do their own
Right.
Research, because nothing's going on certain channels as well.
To camera, everyone, so if you just introduce
Hi, my
yourself.
name's Tom. I'm Jason's uncle. I've known him obviously all his life, and I'm here today to help bring his case to your attention. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Legg. I'm here to help Kirsty and everybody with this case, which is a huge miscarriage of justice, and hopefully down the line we'll get some good news for Jason at some point.
My name is Terry Ellis. I'm here to support Kirsty and the Moore family, and also to highlight the facts regarding his wrongful conviction and sentence.
My name's Samson from Yammy B TV. I'm here to represent my girl Kirsty and the Moore family to highlight the significant factors in the court case and the sad and explaining of the miscarriage of justice of Jason Moore.
I'm Cummines, OBE, and I'm here after reading all this evidence to get justice for Jason Moore, and more important, to get justice for the Derby family whose son was murdered, who wasn't killed by Jason Moore, was killed by other people, another person. who is now served 9 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. So I'm here for justice for both parties.
Hello, my name is Linda Calvey. I'm here to support both the Derby and Jason Moore's family.
My name is Satish Shaker. I'm an author who specialised in injustice and forensic pathology, and I'm here to explain what has gone on in terms of the forensic pathology as it's scandalous, including in this case.
I'm John Kamara. I'm a miscarriage of justice. I was one of the first to go to the criminal case review body. I'm here to support Jason Moore.
My name's Anthony Roberts. I'm director and owner of Global Productions, and I'm here to support Jason Moore and Kirsty Moore and to shed light on this disgusting miscarriage of justice.
Hello. Before we start this debate, there's a poem that's been written by Jason Moore, and I'd like to read this and let people take these words in. It's called Rise of a Broken Man by Jason Moore. You have taken my life, it wasn't yours to take. You have broken my heart, it wasn't yours to break. You stole my spirit, it wasn't yours to steal. Now I'm tortured soul that may never heal. In prison now, a broken man left to die. I stare at the ceiling as days pass me by. Life in tatters, dreams destroyed. I stare at the heavens, very annoyed. I'm in darkness now, going through hell. Life passing me by as I rot in this cell. In this living hell where I didn't do anything wrong, I must find a way to be strong. I stare at the sky and shout, why me? I was once happy and above all free. But something within the depths of me has awoken. It's pleading with me, don't stay broken. It's pleading with me, stay alive, any way you can. It pleads with me, stand a man. So I will now wipe away the tears of anger, the tears of despair, the tears that say life isn't fair. As a once broken man in prison, surrounded by sin, my new attitude is, never give in. I will mend my heart and find my soul. I will get my spirit back and become whole. Now my spirit says, hold on. Now my heart, it beats strong. I found my soul, and to my surprise, a once broken man has begun to rise. Once starved of inspiration and looking at defeat, this new broken man doesn't know when he's beat. I will stare down the demons, I will fight the light. When I come across evil, I will put up a fight. And when I am finally free of this prison, the world will know a broken man has risen. And I think that says it all. Over to Bobby Cummines, OBE.
Well, Bobby Cummines, OBE, and I've followed this case through. I've advised your governments on rehabilitation and been an advisor to the House of Lords. I was awarded the OBE for the work I do with young people to deter them away from crime by going to schools and universities. I'm a best-selling author and I appear on many of your podcasts, as most of you know. But what's moved me about this, and what moves me about any miscarriage of justice, when it's bad enough to go in prison, as I know, when you've done a crime, but when you ain't done a crime, it's a nightmare. What happens in miscarriage of justice is, it's not a miscarriage of justice, let's get this right. To lock an innocent man up, it's a crime against humanity, and that's got to be sorted. Now, with this case, and other people will give their opinions, my opinion is, we've got to get this into reality. Policemen are not dicks in the dock green like we used to see on the telly, where they give you a clip round here and talk to you. We've had so many cases of police corruption, we've actually had cases of policemen being convicted of rape and all other sort of things. So we're not talking about your jolly old Bobby on the beat, we're talking about human beings who are corrupt. Now the head of the police service is weeding out corruption. Well, that's all right if you're weeding out bank coppers, and that's what they are, I'm sorry to say, but that's what they are. It gives a bad name to the ones who are good, and those who are good who allow that to happen and turn a blind eye to it were as bad as the ones who are doing it. Now I'm going to just go on what I see as a fact. I'm going to let you decide. You be the jury, you decide whether this is right. But don't forget, we're talking about a man convicted of a murder he didn't commit, served 9 years of his life that can never be given back to him, right? And who's living this nightmare, even presently today, and he's innocent, and that could be any member of your family. This is a fit-up, and I'm using that word fit-up because evidence has been withheld, lies have been told, and they've lied to a judge, they've lied to a jury. Now, in the CPS, right, they decide what evidence goes up, what they're going to put up, right? There should be every evidence that should go to the judge and let the judge decide, not those who've got a vested interest in when you look at the Guildford 4, the Birmingham 6, men put away for life, for years, only to be found out later that evidence was hidden and police were corrupt and special branch was corrupt, right? What I'm saying to you today, we must never let this happen, because it could be a son of yours or a daughter of yours tomorrow. Now I'm going to show you something. There was an identification parade, right? The person who said, give the evidence, said the person was 5'10", right? Had lots of hair, right? We're talking about Jason Moore here, the man convicted.
Hold on, Bobby. 6'5", Jason.
Oh, sorry, Jason Moore is 6'5", right? We've got two men here. One is an innocent person who volunteered to go on an identification parade. The other one is Jason Moore. I'll say to you, which one is Jason Moore? Now that is the ID parade, right? This is the innocent man who volunteered to go on the ID parade. In fact, looks very much like the person who did the real killing. This is Jason Moore, a young man whose life is being destroyed because everyone sits back on the fence and no one stands up for him. Well, I'm telling you, you know, I put everything on the line for Jason Moore because I know the man's innocent. I don't think, I know. I've read all the depositions, I've read all the evidence, and if this ain't a miscarriage of justice, then unfortunately we have no justice. Because what the message is, a murder gets done or a bombing gets done, and then you get the politicians, we need this fixed, we want a body. Well, what I'm saying to you, we want a body, we do want a body of the person who's done it. But not anybody will do, and that's what Jason Moore was, anybody. Alright? An innocent man banged up in a concrete tomb, living next to his toilet, right, for a crime he didn't commit for 9 years. Imagine that as your son or your daughter. Now I'm going to open this up to other people to have their word.
Oh, so to you.
Hi. One of the biggest concerns I've had regarding the evidence against my nephew Jason was the two witnesses, the only two witnesses to the crime, both identified the men in the street, Robert Darby himself, the man who was murdered, and two other men, of being around 5'10" in height. Both of those witnesses agreed that these were the physical attributes of these three men. When the case came to court, both witnesses gave their evidence from behind screens. Nobody's ever explained to me why they had to give their evidence behind screens. Jason Moore has no evidence of violence, so there was no reason that they should think he would maybe take out revenge on these witnesses. But both of these witnesses gave their evidence behind screens. If either of these witnesses had been able to see Jason Moore and is a co-accused is 5'10", as explained by the witnesses, what they saw in the street. Jason Moore is 6'5". Now, any reasonable person looking at these two men must have realised that Jason Moore is not the man in the street. He's not 5'10", he's 6'5". It would be the same as if they put a 5'2" man next to a 5'10" man. A 7 inches difference, which is a huge amount of height. So why that was allowed and why the defence allowed it, I don't know. But it seems to me that if either of those witnesses had seen Jason Moore in that stand, they would right away realise a wrong man is standing in the dock. And that's, to me, never seems to have been looked at by either the jury or anybody else.
I think for me this is about two investigations. The first one was carried out in 2005 where we had two corroborating witnesses. One was Sally Palmer and one was Abdul Hamid. 2 weeks after the murder, they were both pulled in and they were videotaped going on an ID parade, and their statements were videoed. Both said that the assailants that killed Robert were roughly 5'11", one of them was, and the other one was smaller than Robert. Robert was 5'11". Now both of them said that both assailants were that size. Mr. Abdul then went on to an ID parade and picked this man here, who was actually a volunteer. He said that he was 100% certain that this guy was the murderer, and there was no doubt about it. There was no DNA evidence, and the investigation stalled for 7 years, where a new team took over. And what can only be described as this investigation is corrupt, inept, and lazy. Because what he did then, they then created a story to fit their narrative. They then pulled in Mr. Hamid again 7 years later. They showed him a picture of Jason, and they asked him to do another ID parade. Now we have to remember that 7 years went by. Jason had put on freestone and had long hair. And in the original statement that Mr. Hamid made, he said that the assailant had short hair, was 5'11". Now we all know that Jason is 6'6". I don't see how we can make any distinction with someone who is 5'11" and someone who's 6'6". You know, and for me, I think the judge said it in his own words. This identity parade was very problematic, and he told the jury to dismiss it. Now he should have dismissed the whole case on that ground, because Jason was convicted on that one ID. But what we wasn't told at the time as well is that when Mr. Hamid done his first statement, he actually told the police that he was actually drunk and he'd been drinking all day, and he had a very vague recollection of what really happened that day. However, this was held back from Jason's team. So for me, you know, we're talking about grounds for appeal. We have the identity parade that was flawed. We have an identity parade that was taken 7 years later. We have 3 or 4 different versions from different witnesses, but none of them, in all the time that was going on, said that the man that killed Robert was taller than him. And you know, he's 6'6". That means he towers nearly 7 inches over Robert. So for me, just listening to the evidence and what transpired at this time, I believe that we need a re-investigation of this case.
Jason Moore's uncle rightly puts on the fact that the jury didn't get a chance to look at the alleged murderers. Clarity on what he actually means, he's done it really well, but being experienced in big court cases myself over a number of years, that if you're looking at the alleged perpetrators, you are going to think instantly that it's not Jason Moore, simply because he's 6'5" and 6'6". So you're going to look, and the dairy's going to be on the other geezer who's standing in the dock with him, 100%. It's going to dismiss everything. So why doesn't that be the first grounds of appeal? Terry Ellis rightly says, 7 years later, the great Abdul Ahmed, whatever his name is, changed his story about 20 million times. I've got another bit that he's done there. Terry Ellis says 7 years later, long hair, 3 stone heavier. Then he turns round and he has recollection that it is Jason Moore. arrest that bit as well. That's 2 grounds for appeal. This, just to highlight this, Mr. Abdul, you, the main factor in this whole case, 2 cars. He gave, first of all, I know which one it is. He gave that one. He gave that one. He named that car that Jason Moore was sitting in, allegedly, or got out of. Right? He named that car. No, it wasn't. The car that was used was that one. Jason Moore never got out of the car. Fact. All right. Also, contamination of the evidence. Once again, witness directly says that another man that wasn't brought up in the trial either was sleeping in the car. But hold on a minute. How could he have got out the car to drag the body over there, to put the knife over there so the scene was contaminated from that as well? Of course, the jury didn't get to hear that bit either. How about that? I spent 30 odd years of my life in prison. I know what it feels like to be in jail, seen like also many characters over a lifetime, what it really looks like when you haven't committed a crime. First things first, when you tell people that you're innocent in jail, which Jason Moore is, nobody believes you. The screws don't listen, they've heard it all before, you're just a name and a number. Jason's poem, eloquently put by Linda Calvey, is exactly the way that he'll be feeling. He's resilient and standing up strong, but to me, those are big words from a weakening heart. There's nothing worse than being convicted of a crime that you have not done. He can't do no prison courses to get back out quickly on that tariff that's been set, because you can't do the courses because you have to admit your guilt before, so that he gets a chance. Well, he's admitted it, he's showing remorse, but how's he to do that? He can't do it, can he? Because he never did it. Got me? Also, long term, I speak to Kirsty Moore regularly and the family. It's very difficult for them to lie down. They get stressed out every day. They can't go and do a normal day's work out here because they've got to fight for the one member of family that never had no criminal convictions. I mean, for the life of me, his uncle just said clearly, Jason hasn't got no violent history. He was a working man all of his life. The one thing I know about those criminal court cases, when you're being railroaded, especially by experienced criminals that have been through the judicial system before, Jason Moore doesn't know what to say during his first trial. The solicitors are not helping. He's not used to being able to work out his own court case. He just thinks justice is going to be done. Everybody's pulling strokes during that case and trial. It just sweeps by on everyone. Before you know it, he's the one that's been found guilty of something that he definitely 100% didn't do. That the whole world, the police, everybody knows that he didn't do it. Eventually, he's going to have to come out. There's another member here today that did 20 years behind the door. Miscarriage of justice. He's going to talk very soon. We don't want to leave it that long. We also know that he is going to get out. We don't want to wait that long, 20 years. 9 years is long enough. He's got to rehabilitate when he comes back out. When I came out, I'm finding my feet 3 or 4 years later. So not only has he to suffer in prison, when he comes out and the change and everything, he's got to suffer. All for something he did not do.
Can I just bring a point up here? We talked about Jason Moore, but what we've also got to talk about is Robert Darby's family. They know who killed their son. Now they're walking about there. While Jason Moore's in prison, we must always remember this, there's a killer still out on the street, sticking his fingers up the judicial system and not caring about his families. It is not only the Moore family that live in this nightmare, the Darby family are living this nightmare too. Never in any criminal case that I've ever studied, and I've advised on lots of criminal cases, have I ever seen where the victim's family actually say, that is not the man who killed my son, and we're supporting it because we know he's not the man. Now that should carry a lot of weight. Now the point I want to bring up here, right, of prosecuting people, the rule of thumb, but there's more little issues to this. Is there enough evidence against the subject to provide enough evidence of a realistic conviction? That's number one. Number two, is it in the public interest to prosecute? Well, it's quite obvious from what we've just already heard without going around the table. There was not enough evidence there to prosecute. In fact, the only evidence that was laid before the court and the judge, which I think is appalling, because it ain't just abused the jury, it's abused the judicial system, is corrupt policemen, the CPS hiding information like they did with the Guildford 4 and the Birmingham 6, and this man is banged up. Now what the Derby family want is justice for their son. Locking Jason Moore up is not giving them justice, it's giving a killer a free get out of jail free card, and that family knowing that killer is still walking the streets. That's the last point I want to give you. Now, if we could go over to someone else.
I'm John Kamada, I'm a miscarriage of justice. I served 20 years for a crime I didn't commit. I just want to clarify a couple of things. You'll find it hard. There will be prisoners who will believe them, the ones in the same situation. Now obviously it's the prison system what will try to break them, what will move them. If you don't go on the courses, you're never getting out. That's what they said to me. If you do not go on them courses, you will die in prison. Now obviously every case is different. I had the Suffield family support me on the last 5 years of my case. But remember, this is a family what would have dragged me off that prison van and most probably hung me. Because in their eyes, they were told by the police I murdered their son. Now obviously, he will find it hard because he's literally taken on the whole criminal justice system, the police. I know your family, there's family helping, but he will have more strength knowing that he's just got to keep going. I know it's wrong saying it, but they'll try to break him.
Yeah.
Now when he comes out, that is the problem. Because don't forget, he's been in, I hope he gets out soon, but he made you years. And you've got to look at that. It's when he comes out, he's a different man.
He'd be just like an army man, comes out with post-traumatic stress disorder.
He will need counselling.
Absolutely.
He will need, I still need counselling today, 20 years later.
Yeah.
I find it, no disrespect, I find it, the people I can talk to is the ones who have been in the same situation as me.
Yeah.
We get on, obviously I've came out, I met a woman, I've got 2 children. My 2 boys didn't know nothing about me and about this. They were still getting it at school. Your dad's a murderer. And what we still suffer. Even if we get the family say that man is innocent, the ones who get away with it are your courts, your police, and unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, I am on the committee of the criminal case review body, but I'm there as a role of aftercare. Because believe you me, he's going to need aftercare.
Yeah,
and it's like, you know, we were talking about the fact that this is a corrupt case here. You know, the first investigation went nowhere, and the second investigation, you know, it was full of manipulation, lies, deceit, and everything else. Yeah, we have to remember that they actually brought a pathologist into that court to lie. He actually made his reports based on hypotheses that he believed were written in stone, but had no real evidence to back it up. He was actually struck off. However, the prosecution was still able to use his evidence by letting someone else read it out in the trial. So we have a second trial that was based on lies, corruption, ineptness.
Can I say one thing? The question that keeps popping up to me is, what is the reason that the police have pushed for Jason, an innocent man? So what is the reason that they want an innocent man to go down rather than clearly?
I think
there's an underlying reason.
I think that's a good point. Right, the purely allegedly hypothesis I'm giving
Yeah,
now, right?
yeah.
Not evidence or anything like that. There's only two reasons the police would do that. One, this guy who's done it is giving them bodies,
Protecting him.
right? So they're protecting him because he's obviously sticking other people in the frame. So if anyone's wrapped around you and helping, they've got to be careful because if shit is the fan, he's going to stick them in the frame for things they ain't done. Or the other thing is, he's put a lot of money their way. That's the only two ways. He's either giving bodies and they're protecting him, or he's giving them money.
Because with the
And
amount of
also there's the
evidence, there's got
political,
to be a reason.
there's the political thing to this. They've lied, and when you lie, you've got to tell 1,000 lies to cover that.
It's a web, it's a spider's web.
Yeah, so they don't want to be seen as, if you like, Terry put out about retrial, you know, and evidence and all that. The second trial wasn't a review. It was a fabrication. It was a floor show.
Kangaroo court.
Kangaroo court.
Yeah. I think we also have to remember Tim Darby and all this. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was actually approached by the police who actually said, "We know who the real killer is,"
Yeah.
and that man has been acquitted.
Yeah. Yeah.
They also went on to say that it doesn't really matter about Jason, as long as we get a body.
That's right.
So the answer to your question is they really didn't care who it was as long as they got a body.
That's
And you mentioned it before.
Yeah.
And this is the problem with the rule of law at the moment. They're not interested in the facts. They're not interested in evidence. And because the evidence,
closing the case off.
because the evidence that was actually put, the evidence that was actually put in the first case was so there's such a disparity between the evidence in the first case, which saw Jason walk away, and then you got into the second investigation by lazy, inept, corrupt police investigation team, who then walked Mr. Hamid through the process of an identification parade and made him pick him out. That was the only reason that he was convicted. It was the only reason that he was charged.
Terry, that is why I say this wasn't a trial. This was a play being carried out under script designed by corrupt people to keep that conviction ready. Because they know that if that conviction turns round, then we'd be looking at them. They'll be investigated, and it's not. And the police will always. It makes me laugh when they say we're bringing police to investigate the police. It's like asking Al Capone to investigate the mafia. You can't have your own looking at your own.
But
they're always going to cover up for one of their own. Go on.
Can I come in on this?
Can we quickly stop? Fill up that chair so everyone can. We'll be back.
Rolling.
Okay, so what I was going to start with is something over identification parades. There was a case where a man was a victim of 2 separate miscarriages of justice. That happened quite a long time ago, and one of the major cases in this involved disclosure, because the judge in his trial, the first trial, was actually a prosecutor in a case that was referred to, but this judge prevented the defendant from actually raising the fact that he was not the defendant in the 1877 case. Eventually, he was able to prove his innocence in the best possible manner because he had the classic alibi when the real perpetrator was caught in the act. He was in prison having been framed for the second time. That is the now notorious case of Adolf Beck. It began in 1895, the first one, and the trial was 1896, and there was another one in 1904. 3 years later, the Court of Appeal was established. So we're talking about dubious identification procedures dating back over 125 years. One of the victims of this is sitting next to me, John Kamara.
About the ID parade was a major factor in my case. One, they broke every guideline of the Home Office guidelines, which was, I went on a first ID parade with teenagers. They were 16 years old. I was 24 at the time. I was 6'2". I stood next to a 4'11" teenager. I remember him looking up at me and said, "You're big." I was identified on the second ID parade from the back of the head. this lady accused, she said, she seen me fighting with the betting shop manager. When it came out that my co-accused statement came out that he was attacking the betting shop manager, this was in the Crown Court, he said, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. She said it was the back of the hair. And as the trial judge says, with the prosecution, a lot of coloured people look the same from the back. Therefore, I was convicted on ID parade, which was, I was on ID parades, 2 ID parades. On the first ID parade, no one picked out my co-accused. On the second ID parade, no one picked out my co-accused. I went on after him and was identified by the back of the head. It came out that they took 6 people off the first ID parade and put them on my ID parade. So in other words, she had a chance of whatever. I was then identified. I was 6'2". All of these on my ID parade, they had massive afros. Some even looked like the Jackson 5. I'm sitting there with short hair. And obviously, the ID parade played a big part in the Court of Appeal, even after the Criminal Case Review Commission. They did not disclose to our defence that they took 6 off the first ID parade and put them on Kamala's ID parade. And it only was the Criminal Case Review Commission said the police, Merseyside police, broke every rule on identification. Now obviously, it does play a major part in appeals, is ID evidence.
Yeah.
It's one of where everybody seems to walk out with the ID. And obviously, it's, you know, if there's ID evidence and it's in Jason's bed, he should be in a Court of Appeal over.
How long did it take you to get back to the Court of Appeal?
1983, I got 1981, I got convicted. My first appeal, I had 28 days. They said you've got 28 days to appeal or you can abandon it. And they, at that time, they said, oh, by the way, you're not getting legal aid. So obviously I'm now stuck with 28 days, no legal aid, because my lawyers seem to abandon me. Somebody said to me, there's an organisation in London called Justice, which was Tom Sargent.
Yeah.
He took on my case until he died. He thought in the Court of Appeal that the guidelines were broken. Apparently they said the guidelines didn't come in until, I think it was 84. So literally the police could do what they want on ID parades. And the majority of people I was in prison with fighting the case was ID parades. Obviously it came out in the Court of Appeal that they've broken every guideline. Witnesses, they put me on with teenagers. They were all wearing civilian clothes. It came out, I went on the ID parade in prison remand clothes.
So would you say then that if that was 20 years ago, nothing's changed since?
Nothing's changed.
So we're still having people like Andrew Malkinson coming out of prison after 20 years for a bad ID parade, yourself. Yeah. We've now got Jason with this ID parade. But don't they have something called the Turnbull Guidelines? I mean...
Yes, the Turnbull Guidelines.
So do you think they ignore those? Because, I mean, even in our case, in Jason's case, when I looked at the Turnbull Guidelines, the expanse of time is an issue mentioned.
About the Turnbull Guidelines, they blame my barrister. They were saying he should have known about the Turnbull Guidelines. They even actually say, I should have known about the Turnbull Guidelines. I said, how do I know about the Turnbull Guidelines? I'm not a lawyer.
Can I just jump in here? Right. You've got no representation because your brief's done a runner.
Yeah.
Right? So the guilty is not you, it's him. Who's done the runner. He should have been dismissed or disbarred.
As far as
Basically, you were abandoned. You had no. You had 28 days
to fight my own case.
to fight your own case with no barrister.
I knew nothing about law.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I did get the life sentence, I was told by legal aid, literally they said, you're fucked.
I mean, the case
You've got to find somebody.
Andrew Matheson's case was won by appeal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Now, appeal are a charity, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're a charity designed to help people that don't have legal representation.
And all these, I then started when they found out I got an appeal, I got a letter off Michael Mansfield. I can do your case, and I'm sorry, I wrote back, you can go and fuck off.
But what do you think about all the people that don't have that opportunity, that don't have the money for that are not getting legal aid? How many innocent people are in prison then?
Quite a lot, and I believe they've got to do campaigning. That's the only
But
way.
they've also got to have people like us
Yeah.
to do that
Family.
campaign for them. So
Because at the end of the day, he will get moved about until he tries to break you. I'm sorry.
Can I just bring something up here that I found appalling all the way through this? An innocent man, before he can even think of parole, before he can think of getting out of prison, has to admit to a crime he didn't commit to go through that system. Now, if that is not mental torture, emotional blackmail, and everything else, so how many people in prison have gone hands up because they think, I'll do this course, do this course to get out, so all right, I'll go hands up to the crime I didn't commit, but I've done 8 years, I need to get out now. How many people are still in prison thinking, and that terrible thing, do I go guilty just to get out, or do I say, I'm not guilty and I'm really not guilty, and stand here for the rest of my life?
I can
That
say,
is the most appalling
just a
thing I've ever heard.
little thing before I finish. When I got my appeal, I could have got the Pope to represent me. I went to the person what tried to represent me 18 years ago. He was a young junior barrister. I went back to him when I got my appeal, and I was getting up with Mansfield, Robinson. I said, no, could you get the guy or try to fight for your case? When I seen him, he went, why me? I said, because now it's your turn.
Yeah, got it. I know.
It seems to be a running theme of ineptness through the legal teams that represent people in our positions.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there should be some accountability for having a legal team that doesn't actually
All they say is
represent you in the way you should be represented.
Yeah, absolutely.
well, I mean,
The problem with this, this goes across all crimes though. We're not talking about capital crimes, we're talking about every crime in the fucking book here. So I had the same thing in 2008. I went on trial for 2 robberies I did not do. Got picked out on ID parade 17 months later. Absolute fit up. Went on trial. They said to me, if you plead guilty, we're going to give you a lesser sentence. I'm like, but I'm not guilty. Why am I going to plead guilty to something that I've not done?
Just talking in between the break, and we're just asking ourselves, we have a policy in this country that it takes 25 years to actually say sorry. You know, simply because there's too many variables that could go wrong as far as the investigating teams are concerned. And what that means is, like, you know, even though if they admit that they were wrong and there was a bit of corruption in this, and there was a bit of coercion coercing Mr. Abdul into Hamid into actually picking out Jason. What then comes into question is that all the cases that they've worked on for the last 15 or 20 years has to be reinvestigated and taken out. So this is the problem. You know, because of the way the criminal justice system is set up, it's an arse. It's simply because they're not prepared now to actually say sorry and let him out, simply because it will cost them too much money. So it's not really based on the actual evidence and fact. It's actually based on the fact they don't want to pay out hundreds of millions of pounds in cases.
That is 100% right, Terry. When you've got to look at the criminal justice system, right, how much it takes to get a man to trial, how much it costs for an appeal. Whenever you talk to anything in government, they have KPIs, key performance indicators. KPTs, key performance targets, and KP nuts, obviously designed by the judicial system. But what I'm saying is this: it's not about justice. It's not about people whether they're innocent and guilty. It's about cost effectiveness. It's all about money.
Yeah, and on that, I just want to say this. Along with Jason's partner, we've been looking at this paperwork now for 9.5 years, and the problem is when we got the paperwork, the damage was already done.
Yeah.
So imagine what it feels like to sit there knowing that somebody is doing a life sentence for something they haven't done, and boxes and boxes of this paperwork. Every piece of paper has to be read, and I think Jason's case files fill up nearly 3/4 of a small garage where you'd park your car. Now, when we were started going through the paperwork, and it takes years because you have to live a life as well, the mistake after mistake and the negligence in the initial investigation are obscene. But what is really obscene is the second investigation, the second group of police that came along. They didn't even bother looking at the facts. But what really stood out for me is Abdul Ahmed made 2 claims in 2000, well, he made one in 2012 and one at the trial. Those 2 claims were 2 key pieces of information that went to convict Jason, if you like. And one of them was this ID. 7.5 years after an incident, they're asking a man to ID a man that he's already ID'd in his mind in 2005. Short number 2 haircut, long black hair, 5'7", 6'5". You couldn't even get further if you wanted to. If you wanted to make it up, that is what you'd make it up to be. You know, most men are average 5'9", 5'10", maybe. Someone at 5'7" stands out. A 5'7" man stands out. A 6'5" man stands out.
How tall are you? I'm 5'10". I'll come over here, look, show you. I'm 6 foot.
Yeah.
So I'm 5'10".
Yeah.
He's 6 foot.
Jason's 6'5".
And you know what? That wasn't mentioned.
Bigger than
So Jason's 5'8".
And Jason,
If you think about it, it's like Yammy.
Business exactly.
It's a 7-inch.
Ridiculous.
Look at the size difference there. Look.
Like, you know what? I think what is your point is as well, but
I'm 5'8".
in every
He's
one of
6
them,
foot, that's 4.
in every one of them interviews, he never ever mentioned the fact that this guy was taller.
Neither witness ever saw what we're seeing now.
Exactly.
This is what I pointed out.
Can I just
There's something else that needs to be mentioned on this, and that is the identification of Jason is a fleeting glance identification. There wasn't much time. This is exactly what Turnbull guidelines were designed to prevent. One of the other key points on it is he is supposed to have seen the stabbing from a fleeting glance. He says he saw this, and he is forced to describe the knife, the blade of it. The blade is described originally as 3 inches long by Abdul Ahmed, and at the trial the judge demands a proper explanation of how long the blade was, and he says 6 inches. That is roughly 154 millimeters long. The wound, according to the pathology, and this is one of the things of Shorrock, he doesn't actually say the depth of the wound. It's the one thing he doesn't say that he absolutely should have said. It's absolutely standard forensic pathology. It wasn't mentioned. The other 2 say that it was either 30 millimeters long or it was 50 millimeters long, and that includes the medical treatment because you were trying to save Robert Darby's life. The medical records on the discharge summary say that that wound is 40 millimeters long. It is absolutely impossible to have used so much force that you break ribs and go through to a 40 millimeter injury with a blade which is 154 millimeters long. So you have this key point in the forensic pathology and also the medical evidence. This does not get properly raised at the trial. You then have an important point, which is the leading QC for the defence, Mr. Hauker, says that he believes that Shorrock wasn't present at the trial for medical reasons. This is partially true, he did have medical reasons, but also he had been removed from the register of Home Office forensic pathologists at this time. And the colleague who took over worked in the same firm as Shorrock. So he absolutely knew this. You then look at the things on this and they disclose certain information very late in the day. They talk about the decision of the Pathology Delivery Board to remove Shorrock and the reasons for that. But they mention something else, and that is there was a tribunal by the General Medical Council in 2005. It began, and this went on to look at a number of cases that Shorrock had been involved in 2006, and it said it didn't find anything that Shorrock had done wrong. This is actually wrong, as I went to Oxford because I knew about a particular case with Johnny and wanted to look into this, and it turns out that that case, 2 people stood trial for murder and manslaughter on the evidence of Kenneth Shorrock. It is the only reason that they could have stood trial. The procedure is, if you have an inquest and there is now criminal proceedings, you stop the inquest pending the criminal proceedings. I found out from the coroner's office that they asked to be kept informed of the outcome. They weren't. There was an acquittal. And this means there has never been a resumed inquest in the Oxford case. Now imagine if this had been known in 2007. Would the GMC's tribunal's decision have said Shorrock is okay, there isn't any other things on it, and shouldn't this have been raised? So you now have this situation where you cannot mislead the court. It is completely and utterly outrageous. But that is exactly what's happened here. The court has been misled into believing that Shorrock did not attend because of medical reasons. That's not correct. He didn't attend because he had been thoroughly discredited by the Pathology Delivery Board Tribunal. This should have been presented to the judge and the jury. And the fact of this is they were not informed. And 2 people at least definitely knew this in Jason Moore's trial. That is the Crown Prosecutor, Olkay Sarpanoglu, and the Defence Solicitor Barnes. They should have made sure the court was informed that this was incorrect, that he had got it wrong. And if this had been the case, the jury has considered its verdict on this on the basis that Shorrock did not attend because of medical reasons alone. Imagine the effect if they had actually known you could not have called Shorrock because he had been totally discredited by the Pathology Delivery Board Tribunal. And that affected the rest of the pathology because they had no option but to rely on Shorrock. Now, the crucial thing, what was missed here is the tribunal cases. One of them was a man called Kyle Grand who was murdered, or killed at least, and a person called Kirby who stood trial. Kirby, what they had in this case is, at the time, you had a defence right of a pathological examination. So you could do a second post-mortem. They had an independent post-mortem on this who said nothing wrong, but it did not allow Kirby to exercise his legal right to a defence post-mortem. The judge halted the trial and freed Kirby. He didn't want to do it, but he had no choice under the law because Kirby was not able to exercise his post-mortem right. And the reason he wasn't able to exercise it is Kyle Grant had been cremated and nobody had actually told the family about this right. Now somebody else can comment on
So
this.
basically what you're saying then, Satish, is the knife that Abdul Ahmed described that stabbed Robert Darby couldn't have fit the wound.
No.
You're saying that an expert was put in front of a jury who wasn't an expert.
He was an expert, he was a discredited
expert. So at the time he was removed from the register.
Unreliable witness.
And you're saying that Jason lost the opportunity to do his own post-mortem, right? And yeah, that's, I mean...
Can I bring up a point here? We've seen a lot of, if you like, miscarriages of justice, which I call crimes against humanity, where policemen have been found lying. And what worries me, and I think we've got the Chief Constable of the Met saying, I want to clean it up, I don't want fit-ups to be done, I don't want people taking backhanders to be done. Well, the only way to stop that is when the reason police do that and think they can get away with it is because they're never able to account for what they've done. Now, what I think, if a man is put away for 9 years for a crime he didn't commit and given a life sentence, and he's got to go guilty to get out of there on a crime he didn't commit, why isn't it that if they're found corrupt, that they always seem to leave the police force on sick pay or mental anguish or anything else? Why are they never ever charged with perverting the course of justice and given a prison sentence that man served?
One, they keep their pension, and secondly, they don't bring the force into disrepute.
That's right. It's the Darby family have a massive issue, and one of their main issues is the man that came to court and said he was asleep, contaminated with Robert's crime scene, potentially moved it. Yeah. He hid that knife. He wiped away fingerprints, DNA, forensics, all that went against Jason because he was left nothing to fight his case with. He was charged, arrested for GBH, but then he was de-arrested and not interviewed. Look, and any disclosure around this man is being withheld from Jason's defence.
But it's very important what Terry just said, and I'm sorry Terry, calling you in, is that they leave with their pension, right? But the main thing is you can't bring the police into disrepute. Well, since we've had coppers raping women and doing all that thing, I think ain't got to worry about that anymore, because I think the members of the public now, anyone who's decent will go, can we trust the police? And the truth is, no, you cannot.
No, you can't. You cannot trust the police. That's the problem. That's one of the biggest problems about all this, because you go into a situation like this, law-abiding citizen, never in any trouble, you pay your bills, you do what everybody out there is watching does. Yeah, just get on with your life, and then all of a sudden, you not only do you get convicted of something you haven't done, your family's all in with it.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, and your family lives every day of it with anyone in
exactly
it.
What you're saying.
It's the pattern. But it's the pattern of abuse of the evidence.
There's two things here, right? Two things here. Darby family going through the nightmare, grievous mental anguish, which constitutes assault under law, right? Your family going through the same thing, and that man in there. Now, we must never forget, we're talking about this today, all right? That man is sitting in the toilet, looking at the wall thinking, am I ever going to get out of here? Now, rightly said, what our young man said here, he's going to need a lot of counselling and a lot of damage has been done to him. For what? To keep the coppers right, keep the courts right? No, when it's wrong, the scales of justice are supposed to be balanced. No, they're not. They're tipped in favour of those who are corrupt. Now, I'm telling you this, people are losing faith in the criminal justice system.
Two of the officers in this case...
People are losing faith in the police.
Two of the officers in this case, when the trial was finished, they both retired.
Yeah, but let me tell you something. The Criminal Prosecution Service, I think, should be done away with. Every bit of evidence must give to a learned judge, so he can decide what evidence is relevant and what evidence is not. Not someone who's going to pick out and say, that's going to help the coppers, that's going to help the prosecution. Because that's where the bentness is. Get rid of them, have independent things, and I'll tell you what, when it comes to police corruption, don't just have policemen investigating policemen, have ex-offenders sitting on that, and they'll tell you how bent they are. Right? Have a committee
well, one of the
like
biggest fears at the moment where this case is at, where Jason's case...
Let me just say this.
Yeah.
Because I'm always, everyone knows, I don't tell fibs, right? I'm guilty of every crime I've done. except the first one with 2 bent coppers fitting me up with a cutthroat razor at the age of 15.
Yeah.
Now I've gone up for manslaughter, murder, gone manslaughter, robbery, possession of firearms, all sorts of things, right? Violent crimes. I never did that. But that's what started me off in my criminal. So when people say police officers are corrupt, everyone goes, oh, they all say that. No, that was really corrupt. If I'm willing to go up for armed robberies, for a murder trial, manslaughter, right, and say, yeah, in front of all this now, I did that. I didn't do that cutthroat razor. I was fitted up. So let's not think all police are... But until we get the policeman being treated for corrupt evidence and the prosecution for hiding evidence, it's a perversion of law. They should be held accountable and they should be given prison sentences equivalent to the prison sentence that would have been given to that person.
I don't think that's in any dispute.
No dispute. But what I wanted to, like, you know, because the situation is, like, the guy that got exonerated last week, it took him 20 years. Yeah. 20 years. Why did it take him 20 years? Why?
Because they don't want to admit they've wronged.
Well, it's the system. They design a system.
Exactly right.
They design a path for you to go through. When you're convicted of a crime you haven't done, you're now on a path, and that path involves years. Yeah. And where Jason's case is now, we're going to the CCRC, the Criminal Cases Review Commission. Yeah. Already, if you Google them, anyone can Google it, they're underfunded, they're understaffed. The queue is a year or more long.
I'm going to tell you something.
But it's not even that, Bobby. Let me just make this point. The point that I want to make about the Criminal Cases Review Commission is, like Andy Milken said, why did it take 20 years? Why don't they investigate? They're supposed to be an independent body of people, separate from the courts, separate from the police, that take a miscarriage of justice, reinvestigate it and find out whatever the hell you're going on about, that you're saying that this man is innocent of, or and all the rest of it. They don't even look at it, Bobby, and I know they don't look at it because I'll tell you for why. Jason's first CCRC application, when me and Sandra received that statement of reasons, we kept saying to ourselves for the week, I was walking around with it for a week saying, but how can they respond like that? They haven't read what we've sent them. Otherwise they couldn't.
Can I just say something? I'm going to go back to what Terry Ellis said. It was a very valid point.
Yeah.
Right? It's about money. You've just said they're underfunded.
Yeah.
Right. Let me tell you this, right? If they invested and committed investigations into miscarriage of justice, right, it's going to cost a lot of money. Now those people who want to investigate, they underfund. Because if they get it right, and they say, no, this man was innocent, right? They've got to pay compensation. They've got to pay for the retrial. We're talking about money. Terry hit it right on the button there. It's all about money.
Yeah, well,
and
if that is what it's all about, if that is what it's all about, then why shouldn't they then investigate it properly in the first place? That would save them money.
Because when you get a corrupt copper, he knows exactly that they're not going to investigate it because it costs money and because he can get away with it.
Well,
excuse me.
Go on.
Is because they don't want to dig up the dirt on their fellow officers that's going to eventually come out, so they retire, so their names can't get called. It's late in the day, it gets dragged out. It's the way that it works, and it would always work that way. They would try to cover their tracks when they've done that.
And there's also another problem, which is the Court of Appeal. If you actually look at the way the Court of Appeal has been behaving on a number of cases, let's just take this one for example, they say certain things, that Sally Palmer supports Abdul Ahmed, that the pathology evidence supports Abdul Ahmed, and that the medical evidence supports Abdul Ahmed. If you actually look at all three of those evidence, it doesn't. But the Court of Appeal has got away with saying that.
And not only that, they say that they've fulfilled their disclosure obligations. They clearly haven't. Yes. There's no common sense. If you're looking for common sense in a miscarriage of justice, forget about it. It doesn't exist. Right. Chalk and cheese, they don't know the difference. It comes back to the investigation. Now, it's not right that these families are being put through all of this. Look what that guy said. He said it this morning on Sky News. What are we going to do about the watchdog, and he's referring to the CCRC, who don't investigate miscarriages of justice properly? So what are we going to do? So here is where we're at. We are here trying to get Jason into a CCRC situation where they will reinvestigate the case, go back and ask this drunk witness what it is and what was going on, because this man's inconsistencies are insane. You've seen the pictures. There's more to it than that. But after 9 years in prison, this man has just told a reporter, what do you want from me? It was the blink of an eye. I was passing by. Oh, and I was drunk. And when he said, did you tell the police says, yes, he said, yes, I told the police. Yet in my statements of reasons from the CCRC application, they're saying that all these obligations, these disclosure obligations have been met. So who the hell is lying? Is it the witness not telling the truth? Is it the police not telling the truth? Is it the CPS not telling the truth? And the big question is, why haven't the CCRC got to the bottom of it and done something about it? Why does it take 20 years for something to be done?
Because they're all related.
It's just insane. So are you then saying that they're not independent?
They're not independent, they're all related. We have the IMB that operates inside prisons. They're run by they're judges, ex-magistrates, everything else, You know, on paper they look brilliant, but in reality they've got no power to actually implement anything.
Well, you must realise a lot of our lawyers need to be questioned. Not just the prosecution.
About all this is you've got that man there, Jason Moore. You've got this Abdul Ahmed who admits to being drunk, who saw it all in a flash. That man was sentenced to 18 years on that alone. There was no forensic evidence, no DNA, no motive, no weapon, no circumstantial evidence, no fingerprints, no nothing. Just that a drunken man, 10 years after the event, said, shown this picture by the police, said, yeah, that's him.
Just 1 second. Can you see how this works now? We're all debating Mr. Hamid at the moment, yeah?
Right.
Well, Hamid, yeah? But we're missing the fact that the people that actually put this guy in a position to lie was the police.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. We all spend, this is what they do.
Another thing, if you look at the case as well, it's being proven that Jason never changed his clothes once that day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've only touched
and there's CCTV with that.
Ahmed sounds a bit vulnerable to me. It sounds a bit vulnerable.
You don't know
Police can tell him exactly what to say and change his mind, change his story and blah blah.
He's an immigrant in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. You
don't know if he's committed crimes abroad.
Well, they're going to hold that against him, aren't they?
No, but
David Blunkett has seen this.
They're going to blackmail him.
You don't even know if he's a legal immigrant. But there's one thing, because I think we've all done our bit. There's one thing I'm getting fed up with. People talk about miscarriages of justice.
Yeah.
This is not a miscarriage of justice. This is a crime against humanity, what we're talking about. You've locked up a man in a concrete tomb for 9 years for a crime he didn't commit. I've done bad things in my life, but even I ain't that sick that I've ever done anything like that. It's appalling, and the reason it's happening is because too many people don't want to get involved, don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to be part of a campaign that might make people think I'm sympathy to criminals, or I don't want to get, it might affect me in my job. They've got to stop. The only way we're going to stop that, because it could be your kid tomorrow, is by standing up and saying no more. This is enough.
The miscarriage of justice is a bit like knife crime.
Yeah.
If it affects you, you're then going to get involved.
Yeah.
You know? I think there's been over 342 cases of miscarriage of justice that have been investigated in the last year or so. Yeah. And you know, if we go back even further to, as you said, the Guildford 4, the Birmingham 6, and the Maguire 7.
Right.
These were all innocent people sentenced to life imprisonment. And still, there's not even been an outcry.
No.
20 years later when they came out. It was
well, no,
5
because
minutes.
what happened was, I'll tell you what that's all about. You talk about the Guildford 4, the Birmingham 6, the Maguire 7. Those people in that time, had people speaking out. They had MPs speaking out. They had lords, ladies, all speaking out. So the government then established the Criminal Cases Review Commission. And when they did that, all that vocalness has gone because everything goes to the CCRC. So they got basically stopped. So we're in a situation here which is very unheard of in any case that I've read. One, we have the victim's family saying that the wrong man is in prison for the death of their loved one. We have Lord Ian Botham, who's got a seat in the House of Lords. He is now speaking out for the Jason Moore campaign. There's other celebrities, all you guys sitting around this table. You know, it's unheard of, but you've all seen the evidence. The evidence is off the scale.
There is no evidence. The problem is there is no evidence.
Well, that's what I'm saying. All the evidence.
There's no evidence to see.
Exactly.
But there's more evidence to the fact that he never did it.
Yes,
But
that's
there's no
what I'm
evidence
talking.
to see that
The
he did it.
evidence that says he didn't do it. The evidence says Jason didn't do it.
Just going back to what Terry said just then, it's very important. There's no evidence that he done it. There's millions, tons of evidence saying he didn't. So the scales of justice are like that.
That's exactly.
Right? And that's innocent.
But the way the criminal justice system works now, and this is why they put it underground, because the minute you start talking about it, you then corrupt the actual normal investigation that has been taking place, so they then wipe their hands of it. This is the system that they
Well,
put
do you
in
know what?
place.
I'm glad you said that, Terry, because when I was having a conversation, and this will tell you everything that you need to know about the police. This will tell you everything. Tim Darby took vital new evidence to the police. She told him, no, we've got the wrong man, go home or I will arrest you. When he goes, he then spends the next 9 months trying to take that evidence he had because the police would not listen to him. He tried to take that evidence. He went and got his own solicitor. His solicitor found out who Jason's solicitor was. They had to wait for the Court of Appeal. He came to the Court of Appeal. I mean, who treats a victim's family like that?
Exactly.
But what is so outlandish about it is the Court of Appeal said that his evidence wasn't credible because he had waited 9 months to go and write it in a statement. But the point is, within days of getting that evidence, he went into a police station to make that statement, to give that evidence, and they told him to go away.
Or is it going to prove that they're not done it?
So how the hell does that work?
So we're in a predicament now that we need to open doors ourselves.
As well, if he was in America now, this man wouldn't be here. Jason would be, they'd both be dead because they'd been put to death. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So if he was over in Texas, innocent people are dying, mate, and it's the same thing over here.
The reality is, Tony, right, is that it's not really rocket science to pick up a bit of paperwork, to look through the evidence, look at the thing in its totality. There's only Abdul Ahmed and a few little discrepancies.
There's too many guilty people.
There's too many guilty people.
Yammy, two witnesses, Jason, the two witnesses said...
I only had to look at it once and there was nothing
it's
there.
even worse. Two witnesses said that the stabber was wearing a blue jacket. The CCTV viewing officer, who was one of the lead two detectives in this case, she wrote down Jason Moore wearing an Adidas top with 3 stripes. Getting back to the height issue these guys demonstrated earlier, the police took Jason to the wall and measured him at 6'5".
I think we've said enough here.
Yeah.
I really do. I don't think you go any further. What we're saying here is, I mean, it's everyone agrees, right? You look at the evidence speaks for itself. It speaks for itself. It really makes me angry, and I shouldn't get angry.
When you create a lie to defend the truth, I think that is when we know we're up against something that's so corrupt. You know, that we need. That's what we're up against. So I think I think going forward, I think the likes of Ian Botham, the likes of what we can bring to the table. Will hopefully open a few people's eyes.
Well, I hope so, Terry. Your lips to God's ears.
All I keep saying to people all the time, one of my key things I say to people all the time, I say it on Facebook, I say it on social media, I do not stop going on about it. I was where you are, Jason was where you are, just normal people, normal lives. So the one thing that this case can tell you is that if it can happen to us, it can happen to you. And unless we all start talking about this, I mean, corruption is in the news. I mean, police officer, it's all you hear about these days. You know, all the stuff that they're getting away with, what they're getting up to. People that are scared to speak the truth, that takes years of time to come out and be able to talk about it. Johnny Kamara is telling you that this ID witness scenario was going on 20 years ago. This man that came out last week, another 20 years.
There's many
How
more.
many
There's a
years?
list. You want me
How
to bring
many
my
more
phone
years?
in? Let me tell you something. I'll tell you what's going to
Put the
happen.
nail in the coffin here, right? They had Operation Countryman, where the robbery squad would bang at it. They had to bring coppers from outside of Metropolitan Police because they couldn't trust their own coppers to investigate their own coppers. And what happened after robbery squad got wiped out?
Yeah.
This is a shoot to kill.
Oh, it'd be terrible to fly
Kirsty,
squad.
as you were saying, it isn't just, you said it was 20 years. It isn't. It's over 125 years.
And we still not
Adult
learned
men.
anything, right? Nothing's
That's
changed.
the point.
So what do we do? So what do we do?
So what? Yeah, what do we do?
What do we do now?
How do we sort this out? How do we stop
Well, what you've got to do
this
is
happening?
educate people.
What we need the facts.
Yeah.
We need the facts of the case. We need credible witnesses.
Yeah.
And then we need to present something that's coherent that people can understand.
I will answer your question with one word. What we need is accountability.
Exactly. But also, we need these people in these positions to start
Thank
listening.
you, Kirsty.
They need to start listening.
You need the
You
first
cannot
person.
have a victim's family and another family and a campaign all saying all this evidence supports Jason is innocent, rightly corrected earlier, yeah, and nobody does anything about it.
And what you also need, and it must be, accountability.
Yeah.
If they're corrupt, they've got to be proven corrupt, and they've got to be sentenced for being corrupt. It's called perverting the courts of justice.
That's exactly what it is.
And that's,
And
I'm finished now.
the chain of events, no, I ain't finished. The chain of events is the first person that gets the request for the miscarriage where we're all debating and telling you that Jason Moore is innocent. The first person sitting in that seat that gets that paperwork, we want that changed. How do you deal with it when you get it? What happens if she looks at it, he looks at it, and he says, look, this has come through, we've got to read it. No, don't get that through.
Yeah.
So you've got to have that position sorted out first so it gets quicker along the way.
Yeah, but CCRC,
Exactly.
well, as soon as that goes in, they can say no.
Yeah, but
And then everybody, we're all knackered.
And the one key point, what everybody needs to know and understand in these cases is if you want to go to the CCRC, you can go as many times as you like. But what you have to go with is fresh, new evidence. And if you haven't got any, there you go.
I'm going to say it now, and I'm not
There was never no evidence.
Hold on, let him speak. Let him
no
speak.
evidence to start with.
Let him
about the
speak.
CCRC, and I'm going to say it, you mightn't like it, but you've got one chance. You've got to make sure that application has everything.
Well, you've got to believe, you've listened here today, we've got about 1,000 things.
Yes, but
So that we ain't going to get much more than what we got now.
I'm giving you the experience.
Actually, you will.
All we got to do is bring Abdul Ahmed in there and it's all over.
No, it's not.
What else then? Because if he's changed his story 3 times, then he's not credible.
Can I
is he?
say something? This is about, forget whatever now.
I know what you're talking
This is
about
about
CCRC.
law.
I'm telling you, there's
They will-
enough
yes,
evidence
I know.
for it to go on the table
what do
right
you do?
now.
Obviously not, because it hasn't
No.
gone on the table.
Well,
They
that's
will
just
do
the
law.
process,
Okay.
obviously.
Look,
Doesn't mean that I don't believe that should be.
Let's just answer
I
this
think
point.
the whole point of tirelessly working a campaign, tirelessly going through paperwork, getting hold of everybody you can, getting prominent people involved, such as yourselves and everyone. The one, for me personally, why am I doing this? Because there's other people that are innocent that aren't doing it, but I'm doing it for this particular reason. I'm saying to the CCRC, please give Jason Moore's case the investigation from yourselves that it deserves.
Yeah,
That is
exactly,
what I
Kirsty.
want. If you are the people that are to investigate if you're everything you are on the tin, look at Jason's case.
Yes.
We're all here to
Because-
ask you to look at that. People are getting involved because we know that there's a serious problem here and we need you to investigate Jason's case
It's not only that,
because
Kirsty, it's not only about just this case being reviewed properly, it's their credibility being put on the line if they don't
Its
do it
credibility's been put on enough of lines over a lifetime, Bobby. The end result's going to be this. We're all going to be outside the appeal court courtroom. All of us in this room now, I'm going to be walking out with Kirsty. The cameras are going to be there. We're going to go, right, he's just been released, Jason Moore. How many years later? And we're going to tell you we told you so.
I think we live
So
in
more guilt for all of you lot in the end.
I think we live,
That's how it's
we live
going
in
to
a
be.
time of social media. We've had hundreds of people lost their bank accounts and banking details over the last couple of years, and nothing has been said. We have Nigel Farage that loses his bank account. He takes it straight to the House of the Commons, and the right people listen to the argument and action was taken.
Yeah.
We need people in the right position, in the right environment to do this job. He was right.
Yeah, he got it done quickly. He got it done quickly as well.
But up until that time, when I'm not going to mention any other names that lost their accounts, they said, "Well, so fuck."
Yeah, exactly, Terry.
But we need to take it to the right person who will say, "I do give a fuck."
Well, how do you get to them? How do you get
Well,
to
we
them?
we need to do exactly what we're doing now.
Yeah.
We need to go to Parliament again. We went to the Justice Court a few weeks ago. We all met. And then we could go there again, and we'll meet some more different people. And it's just about keeping and doing it. Because you know what? He's going to be in there for another 10 years, another 11 years, another 15 years. So it's up to us to keep doing exactly the same thing and keep going down there, and going down there.
Give me, Kirsty, give me the paperwork, give me the door number of the... And I'll knock on the door and I'll walk straight in there and I'll put it on the table.
Everybody that's watching this case to say, listen, that could happen to me. Just get involved in this case. Do what you can. Sign a petition.
It's what I've said from
anything you can.
What I said
Bad.
from
It's bad.
right? This could be your child tomorrow.
Exactly, Bob.
And one thing as well, just before I finish, the end of what it is, they've got to keep hiding. They've got to keep hiding. They can only hide so much.
They can be hiding all the time, guys.
Well,
it's not funny, is it? You know what I mean, Dad? You know what I mean?
You see, as my lawyer said to me, we've only got to be lucky once. Now, obviously, a lot of cases depend on, quite a few is non-disclosure, which was me. I got them, they reckon I got one of the massive single cases of statements which, at the time, they withheld from my defence over 234 statements.
Yeah.
One of the key things what I wanted to say is, in the guy that was with Robert Darby in the car, who was the guy that contaminated the crime scene,
He
just go back to him.
Asleep,
he came to the court and said he was asleep, so he gave no evidence, basically.
Yeah.
Well, Dennison, the prosecution KC that put him in front of that jury, when we got to the Court of Appeal, he said, well, his evidence wasn't credible anyway, and he was never going to say anything. So, you know, the jury didn't hear him say that. Had the jury have heard him say that,
undisclosed.
There you go.
Because that can affect the outcome of their case.
Absolutely.
That's 5 things.
Yeah. But they don't seem to, you know, you go at them, you know, when you get into the world of legal, it's hard graft. It's like, you know, but these are points that like slap you in the face when you're looking at this stuff. I mean, you think to yourself, well, there must be a law. They can't say one thing at a trial and then say another thing at a court of appeal.
They can just move to goalposts whenever they feel like
that
it.
is what you call it being fixed. And it's not fixed in your favour. It's fixed
I
against
just
you.
wish it was that easy, you know, really. But you know, if the truth is that easy.
Sometimes I wonder if they
it'd be
covered up
crazy,
the murder
wouldn't it?
argument.
You know?
Right, let's
Sometimes, anyway.
Shall we all bring
It is about the CCR.
Shall we all bring it to a close now? I'd like to thank you all for being here, for representing
I'd like to thank
Jason.
you all for coming.
And I'll tell you this, and I've said it on TV before, I won't stop this until the last breath in my body.
I don't get involved in anything.
And I'd never say that, but I tell you, there's nothing, it's hard enough doing jail when you know you've done it.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare doing jail when you ain't. And don't forget that last word I want to say, could be your child tomorrow. You could be wishing for people like us standing up and talking for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you.
And following on from what Bobby Cummines has just finished off with, we'll go into The Rise of a Broken Man by Jason Moore and how he feels about being in jail for something he never did.
Why don't you say that again?
I am.
Do your intro again.
As we finished on that note from Bobby Cummines, now we're going to hear from what Jason Moore actually feels like behind those prison bars in a cell all alone. He recites exactly how he feels. The Rise of a Broken Man by Jason Moore. You have taken my life, it wasn't yours to take. You have broken my heart, it wasn't yours to break. You stole my spirit, it wasn't yours to steal. Now I am a tortured soul, and that may never heal. In prison now, a broken man left to die. I stare at the ceiling as the days pass me by. Life in tatters, dreams destroyed. I stare at the heavens, very annoyed. I'm in darkness now, going through hell. Life passing me by as I'm not in this cell. In this living hell where I didn't do anything wrong, I must find a way to be strong. I stare at the sky and I shout, why me? I was once happy and above all free. But something within, in the depths of me, has awoken. It's pleading with me, don't stay broken. It's pleading with me, stay alive any way you can. It pleads with me, stand as a man. So I will now wipe away the tears of anger, the tears of despair, the tears that say life isn't fair. Golden Benny. Do it for me. Come on, do it. You asking me? That's it. As a once broken man in prison, surrounded by sin, my new attitude is never give in. I will win my heart and my soul. I will get my spirit back and become whole. Now my spirit says, hold on. Now my heart, it beats strong. I found my soul, and to my surprise, a once broken man has began to rise. Once starved of inspiration and looking at defeat, this newly broken man doesn't know when he is beat. It will stare down the demons, it will find the light. When I come across evil, I will put up a fight. And when I am finally free of this prison, the world will know a broken man has risen. But big words coming from Jason Moore. Resilience, hope, belief, desire, hold on to what I've got, but really in reality, he's not as strong as that. He has to think that way, otherwise he's going to go under in there. Those are the facts of a broken man.
Well done, Yanni.
Yeah.
Well done, mate.
Why couldn't someone scroll up the fucking thing for me, man? For fuck's sake, man, I was on a roll, man. Fucked up my fucking shit, man.